Under Armour NEXT camp in Atlanta brought out star after star, but the one who shined brightest for 24/7 Sports was 4-star defensive lineman Malik Autry. He was named the alpha dog for the event. The top 100 player is currently committed to Auburn, and he was just one of many big-time players at the event. So let's bring in someone who was there to take it all in. The aforementioned Cooper Petagna joining us now. And Coop, before we get into who was there, when you go to events and settings like this, what are you looking for in your evaluations?
Well, we're trying to get the rankings right first and foremost, but the biggest thing is really just size, speed, athleticism. How do these guys project? Do they need to put on weight? Where are they in terms of their physical timeline as well? I remember last year you go back and you look at some of the names that showed up about Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams, Jordan Ross. All three of those guys, they end up inside our top 10. All three of them minted 5 stars in 2024 as well. And you think about that, Cam Coleman was a guy that jumped over 160 spots. You look at a guy like Jordan Ross, the same with him. He goes from number 81 all the way up to number 12. So a lot can change. We got an update coming out for 2025 at the end of the month. So a lot of opportunity for these guys to make money, especially in terms of rankings. But the biggest thing for us, this ended up being one of the most, I would say, noteworthy events in terms of getting a lot of information where these guys are and their physical trajectory as they go in towards their senior season. Going to be a really, really important piece of the evaluation process for us going forward.
You mentioned getting those rankings right, and there will be an update soon. We might see this guy on the update. Top 90 player already in defensive lineman Malik Autry, the alpha dog this weekend. What was it that made him stand out?
Well, he put on about 30 pounds from the last time we saw him, which was at this camp last year in Atlanta. So he's about 320 pounds plus. He's 6'5.5", and the size is really hard to find, but the athleticism, you can't teach it as well. So when you put that together, that size and athleticism combination, here's a guy who's going to play in an even front. He can play the 1 technique, the 3 technique. I love the position versatility, and we talk about ascending players, right? I just talked about 3 guys that worked their way inside the top 10, and a lot of that had to do with what they did at this camp in this setting. I think Malik Autry is a guy, he's an ascending prospect. He didn't have the greatest production last year, only had 3.5 sacks, but I expect a big senior season from him, and I think Auburn's going to have to do a lot of work to keep him in the boat as well.
Another name that will be prominently featured in the update for the 2025 class is 5-star quarterback Julian Lewis. He's been committed to USC. A number of other programs are still pursuing for him. But Cooper, how did Julian Lewis perform on Sunday?
He did well, steady Eddie, right? And this is a guy that's reclassing coming up a year, so he's going to be entering football 1 year earlier, but he's so experienced. I mean, you think about his win-loss record over the last 2 years. He's 25-3, playing a high level of competition there in the state of Georgia. He's also thrown 96 touchdowns and 14 INTs. So he had 48 touchdowns over the last 2 years in each of the last 2 seasons, but he took that INT number down from 12 to 2. So we all know this is one of the most polished arms in the country. I think the biggest thing for him when you see him on an on-air setting is that just deliver. What are we going to expect, especially from the psychology of the player in terms of the body language as well? How does he interact with other guys out there? Is he engaged? And he checked box after box after box, and that's what you expect. A player of that stature, he also performed really well as well, too.
Yeah, he's been locked in with USC for a while, but he's been taking some visits. Auburn, Ohio State, Georgia, still hoping to pull him in their direction. Meanwhile, 5-star defensive lineman Justus Terry. How did the Georgia commit fare in the trenches on Sunday?
He looked great. I mean, he looks like a Georgia defensive lineman, right? When you think about Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Jordan Hall, the 5-star that they brought in 2023. I mean, this is what these guys look like. And the good thing about Justus Terry, he's just a puppy. Going to play his football for the Bulldogs, and he'll grow up one day. But right now, he's still got a little ways to go. 6'5", 275 pounds, similar to Malik Autry. I think this is a guy that can play a lot of different positions. You see flashes of dominance, and for him to go to Athens to be under that strength conditioning program, obviously get the positional development as well. This is a guy that's got star potential written all over him. So I think if you're a fan of the Bulldogs, you love line of scrimmage play, I mean, you expect this caliber of player with what Kirby Smart has been able to build there on the defensive line. I expect that with Justus Terry as well.
And as we mentioned in the headlines, USC and Florida State are 2 schools that will be getting visits from the Georgia commit this spring. And speaking of the Seminoles, Cooper. Linebacker Darrell Johnson appears to be trending towards Florida State on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball. He punched his ticket to the Under Armour All-America game next year in Orlando. What did you think of Darrell Johnson's performance?
I loved him. He's a three-phase player, pretty raw, but a really dynamic athlete. And you turn on the tape, he does a little bit of everything. I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out what is he going to be. Is he going to be a strong safety overhang? Can he play off the edge? Is he going to be an off-ball linebacker? You see the height, weight there, 6'1", 200 pounds. He's got a 6'7" wingspan. He's a multi-sport guy. He's pretty raw in terms of he needs reps, he needs coaching. But in terms of the athlete, straight line, explosive, dynamic, made some plays in coverage as well down the field. He's got a lot of stuff you cannot teach in terms of the speed, the athleticism in space. He's going to figure it out. He's going to need a little bit of time. But I love this kid. I love his ceiling as well. So whether it's Florida State, somebody else, somebody's going to get a heck of a player in Darrell Johnson.
As for the 2026 attendees, there were a few. One we want to highlight, though, is athlete Jonah Winston. Yes, he is the younger brother of former #1 pick Jameis Winston. He's got the name going for him, Coop, but how do you look this weekend?
I really like this kid. In 2026, he played at Hoover. He plays quarterback. He plays running back. You see him work out of the slot as well. I mean, he came in, same event last year, 150 pounds, so didn't expect much this season, but we like the player a lot, and I'll tell you this, he's dynamic. He's exactly what you want out of the slot in terms of being able to play at a very controlled pace as a route runner, but still very fast as well. His ability to create separation, whether it's off the line of scrimmage against press coverage or whether it was at the top of the route. I think that's the biggest thing that kind of stood out about him. Another multi-sport guy, baseball background. You love the genetics. You mentioned his brother, obviously in the NFL and former Heisman Trophy winner. So there is a lot of meat left on the bone. He's got 2 years left of high school. I love this kid. Another dynamic guy that we'll just wait and see, but his best football's certainly ahead of him.
I love it. Coop, thanks so much for being here. We always love the analysis, getting ready for the 2025 class and also 26. You can learn more about these prospects and really every member of the 2025 class. I'm just going to throw it out there. These guys know what they're talking about. Make sure that you're taking in the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast with Cooper Petagna and Andrew Ivins. New episodes are dropping every Tuesday and Wednesday. You can watch it live at 5 o'clock Eastern right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page or listen wherever you get your podcasts.